WLPFM in New Orleans. We are Radio Null HIV programming. That's right, programming dedicated to human rights and social justice. WHIVFM.org. We honor independent voices. We are not a radio station with a mission. No, we are a mission with a radio station that is to end all wars. We're back, baby. We are back. Welcome to Noise Filter, where we have spent the day trying to get back on to our previous platform that we've been on, and now we are so happy to actually have figured out all of the issues that has come up as technical issues tend to do. But before we talk about that, let me introduce the man who's DJing right now, apparently.
Yeah.
Not only is he a doctor, not only is he a local celebrity extraordinaire, he's now also a DJ.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. We shouldn't have left you. Without some dope steps to step to.
The only issues, I don't know if we can post stuff that is on YouTube and to Facebook that's been copyright. That's my one issue with that.
Yeah. So we faded it down.
Got it. All right, Eric, we are back. We've been, I think our last show was somewhere in probably the late August pre-Ida kind of situation. And then I had to deal with Delta, and then we decided that we were going to put the show on pause. And in the last couple weeks, you and I have been kind of itching to kind of get back and start doing this again. And it looks like we're going to probably do it with some changes, right? We're going to probably go to a once a week format.
Once a week, unless you ask for otherwise. It'll be by popular demand. If maybe twice if we have time. Things are hectic.
Things are hectic. Yes, indeed. So one of the things that we'll be doing is we're just going on today just to kind of work out the cobwebs, and really, quite frankly, I want to see if Eric still has it or not. So
I never lost it. Let's do this. Let's do this.
So as I sat down to prep the show, I had significant technical difficulties. Hello to all of you.
You see, folks, nothing's changed.
Hello to everybody who's joining and jumping in. And I'm going to kick it over to Eric in 1 second. But it's great to be back. And I'm going to try to pull up something that we can kind of talk about as we were prepping today. We came into a bunch of technical difficulties. But the show right now is going to be planned. Will be run on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock. Looks like what we're going to be doing. And again, today's show is just working out the kinks as well. And so yeah. So Doc Griggs, why did we decide to come back on air? Is there anything significant that's happening?
No, man. There's I guess we were just
the room.
Yeah, we were bored and there was nothing to do. We were just sitting around since everything has calmed down and COVID is over and we're all back, and nobody has anything. There's nothing else to do. So I figured, now you know that I'm dreaming and I've not hit my head. Omicron has hit us like a vengeance since Christmas Eve. I've had at least 59 people now call for guidance and interpretation of the rules and what to do to protect themselves, and asking for guidance and advice on how to navigate this public health crisis and what they should and shouldn't do. I've had to be Dr. Grinch for a lot of holiday parties and festivities, but I tell people I welcome the smoke. I mean, at this point, we've been getting so much smoke, it feels funny when it's not there. It's just a need. We missed you guys, but it's time. I think things have gotten a little more. Well, no, I won't say a little bit more confused. They've gotten as confused as things calmed down for a minute, and now things are quite muddled. And I just thought that you guys might appreciate our voices in the bunch.
Yeah, Eric, why don't we start by everything started on Thanksgiving. Maybe kind of bring us back to Thanksgiving Day when everything you're like, oh, you get a couple tests, everybody's been vaccinated, maybe the majority of our family's been boosted, easy peasy breezy, right? And then our phones started blowing up.
Yeah, people are like, dude, what the deuce, man? I know I've been vaccinated, I've been boosted, and this is a breakthrough. Okay, well, breakthroughs happen, and it started with the typical, the vaccine's not 100%, blah, blah. Wait, okay, dude, but then there's another, okay, hold on, let me call you. Dude, something must be going on. Something's happening. I don't know what it is, but this is way too many breakthroughs. Too many breakthroughs. What do you think's going on? And then all of a sudden, Mark Allen it's taken 2 years of pounding on the anvil over the head, and he's made me an infectious disease history buff. I'm all about it now. South Africa decided to sound the bell, be the herald, and let everyone know that, listen, there's something really going on here, and we don't know what it is, but it seems different than what we've seen before. And of course, unfortunately, it was named at first the South African variant, and we're going to close our borders to South Africa, much like what happened over 100 years ago with the unfortunately named Spanish flu. Did not start in Spain, just like this variant did not start in South Africa. Right. And it started trickling. It was a trickle. Then it turned into a drip. And then it turned into a puddle. And now it's a flood.
Absolutely. I've never seen anything move this fast before. This has been something that has been just really an incredible and fast-acting virus. And just to kind of drive that point home, just real quickly, just wanted to show this right here. Can we see that? And we're working out oh yeah, there we go. Cool. Look at that, Eric. Whoa. Eric, look at that. Like, have you ever look at
Holy smokes and Batman. Boom.
Just boom. And you know how many cases we had today in Orleans?
Only about 3 or 4, right?
Yeah, 1,000.
3 or 4,000.
Right. And so yeah, it has been an unbelievable explosion of cases. And of course, this is why we decided to jump back on air. And again, largely, I'm going to start working in the hospitals again here very soon. So what we decided, and of course, Eric is super busy. What we decided to do is we wanted to come back. We'll do Wednesdays from 6 to 7, once a week. Right now, what we're just trying to do is we're just working out all the kinks so that when we come back on Wednesday, we can just jump right into things. So that being said, I think the big story, I think there are a couple big stories for us to talk about. So I definitely want to talk about what we're seeing in terms of people who are getting Omicron, right? So let's talk about Omicron.
So Mark Allen, can you, before you even go there, I'm basic literacy, like we did when this first came out. Let's go back. You started at Thanksgiving, and I handed the baton back.
Okay.
What is Omicron? So this thing happens in South Africa. By the way, the vaccination rates in the southern part of Africa, in Botswana at the time, was 0.7%. Mark out.
Again, thank you for handing that vaccine apartheid baton back to me. Thank you, and much love to Desmond, Reverend Desmond Tutu, who was an amazing soul and also fought for all the right things in life that at least I agree with. So anyway, that being said, South Africa had an enormous number of cases. They went literally from 250 cases, boom, to 2,000. And then boom, it spread right over to the UK as well. So one part of the story that I think is important for us to tell that we're going to get to, but we're going to put a pin in it right now, was that 25% of healthcare workers in South Africa and in the UK were actually getting sick from Omicron. And what that did is it inspired the UK to take their policy for isolating healthcare workers and take it from 10 days to 5 days. Yeah, now that's a tease, because we're going to talk about that in a moment, because America just does it better. They can't, the US can't be undone, right? They're going to have to do it better. So we're going to get to that in a second, because boy, did the CDC, Eric and I last year scrimped and scraped we tried so hard to support the CDC. We tried, we looked at it from every angle. We did not want to call the CDC corrupt. That's done, but we'll get to that in a minute.
I didn't call them corrupt. for the record. I still have not called them corrupt. I think there's a misstep here, there. For the record, I did not say that.
For the record, I am the one that's
Not
calling
saying
him
that.
corrupt. Doc Griggs is not at all, and I will dial back my language a little bit.
I'm the GIF of the dog that said, "Who ate the cookie?" It wasn't me. It was not me. It was not. I did not. He said that.
Exploded throughout the globe, right? Right now, we don't have a good R naught, and the R naught is really the best indicator. But I think that this is one of the most infectious viruses that we've ever seen. And dare I say, dare, that this could be more infectious than measles?
Ooh, you know what? Based on the data and what I've read and what I'm hearing and experiencing in the community, I don't disagree.
I think that this I have never seen something like this ever just explode the way that it has. So
dude, I know people that have done everything right, everything, the mask, even outside, and they're positive.
Right. And so that's the third thing that I definitely want to talk about is we need to talk about upgrades on masks as well, but we can get to that in a quick second. All right. Yeah. But again, if you guys are tuning in, this is Noise Filter. Eric and I are super glad to be back on air after being off for a few months. The show will resume on Wednesdays from 6 to 7. Your quarterback last week didn't do too good, did he?
Doesn't matter. He wasn't playing. He had a great college career. We didn't do too well in the bowl game, but hey, man, hey, easy now. Anyway, no dairy.
Listen, the guy came back, right? I mean, the guy stepped up and had his Monday night. He had his professional football debut. Like you're going to get beat up a little bit.
Can we talk about something else?
Anyway, Eric, talk to us a bit about what Omicron is doing to the community, infections, the virulence. Maybe talk a little bit about who's getting infected and who's not.
So I want to first of all lay a platform, and I've changed my verbiage, right? I've changed my vocabulary. And when we're using the term, and we've been using it for a long time, there's still a lot of people that aren't familiar with the public health terms and the epidemiologic and biostatistical terms of infectivity and virulence. When you hear infectivity or infectiousness, I want you to think contagiousness. How contagious. When you hear virulence, I want you to think lethal, murderous, lethal. How lethal the virus is the virulence. How contagious it is the infectiousness. What's happening in the community? I'd say out of the 59 people, 52 are vaccinated. And the prevalence or the majority, the incidence of the Omicron variants in this community is upwards of 85 to 90% at this point. So it's mostly Omicron. Omicron is a variant. It is along the lines, in the same line. It's in the same family as the coronaviruses, as COVID. They did skip, dude, I'm always bad with this. They skipped new.
They skip new and G.
Are you sure that's how you say it? G. X-I?
I think Liana said no. How do you pronounce it, Liana? It's pronounced pie, but it's spelled X-I. And
it's pronounced pie. Okay.
Right. But it's because of the way it's spelled. They did not want to offend because it is conceived as a Chinese word. And
yeah,
so.
And it was actually, is it a common name, a last name, or it's a name, right?
Well, I think the president or the prime minister, I'm not sure how to refer to the leader of China, but that's his name as well.
Yeah, so they didn't want to do that. And of course, they didn't want to use NU, because if things aren't already confusing, say, Doc, I got that new. You have the new or the new? No, you have the new. Which one? The newest of the new or the new? Nah, man, I don't know what you're talking about. I thought you knew. No, see that? You see how confusing it is?
Yeah. Right.
So they skipped it, and Omicron was the next in line. And people are like, Doc, are there other variants out there? The answer is absolutely and yes. If you remember from our amazing, funny cartoon with the changing of the hats and the three little pigs, viruses mutate all the time, and there are variants out there happening all the time. The issue is Jeffrey says he has the old one, and we'll get to that too. because that's not the only one. That's the one we're dealing with in this region is Omicron. There are variants that happen all the time. Most of the mutations aren't to the virus's advantage. Remember, this is a competition. The virus wants to survive just like we do. So for those mutations and those variants that can't either take a hold or aren't to the virus's selective advantage and give it a leg up, then they go away and they're not important. The variants of concern are the ones that, like Omicron, and if you'll notice, usually when they say variant of concern, it turns into a real concern. Now, we were protected last spring. Was it Lambda and Mu and Kappa? Remember those?
It was Lambda and
it was
Mu. It was Lambda and Mu. Yeah.
In Peru, those, and we were worried about them. And Mark Allen's been afraid of those this entire time because, as I learned almost 2 years ago, actually 22 months ago, when he said it, I never thought of it. He was like, viruses, it's a natural tendency of viruses to become less virulent or lethal and more contagious. And if you think about it, it's to their selective advantage. Now, if you watch how things have evolved, Omicron understood the assignment. It understood the assignment. It read the books and it's learned. Not only has it learned to become more infectious, because from what I've read, it's 2.7 to 3.7 times more infectious than Delta, really, for all intents and purposes, 3 times more infectious. Well, no, that was last week. I got it. Give me a minute. than Delta. The reason that when you use the term mild, and everyone's saying it's a mild virus, that's a relative term. It's a mild infection relative to the unvaccinated. It's still COVID. There are still people going to the hospital. And, there's another term that I want to redefine, Mark Allen, that, I didn't think about it until randomly one night reading. And I'm like, you know what? If you and I are in the yard and say we get into it, we're wrestling, I'm wrestling you, you're wrestling me, and there are other people there, and David jumps in, my defenses are compromised. I want you to think, instead of immune compromised, I want you to think of your defenses are compromised. Why am I immune compromised all of a sudden? Why are my defenses compromised? Because I'm focusing on wrestling Mark Allen. That's what happens when you get infected with another virus. We're in cold, flu, strep throat, RSV, and COVID season. If you're already fighting, even if it's a milder case, quote unquote, and that's a misnomer, of COVID, you're wide open. You're vulnerable to the flu, to RSV, to strep. So you're immune compromised. Having a cold is being immune compromised. Having the flu is being immune compromised. Strep throat is immune compromised, which is why we want to use every tool we can to protect ourselves. I digress. What happened, Omicron has learned, is that it learned it from Delta. If I occupy, as a virus, the upper airways and hang out where people talk and yell and they don't want to wear a mask because they're sick of this, I can infect more people. But it also learned, again, we talked about this before, remember? If you have older siblings, watching what they get in trouble for so you don't. If I don't live in the lungs, if I don't go and hang out in the lungs, then people can stay well and they can keep spreading the virus. If I go hang out like Delta did and go hang out in the lungs, the body's going to react. It's going to shut down the oxygen. People are going to get sick. They're going to go in the hospital, and they're going to be around less and less people. And you know what? You guys won't let me in the party anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to occupy from here up, which is what happens. I'm going to focus less down here, and I'm going to figure out how to latch on, and multiply myself at the rate of 70 times that. As soon as I get in, I'm going to open the door for 70 of my buddies. As soon as I get in. That way, when they're yelling and talking and breathing, 70, it was 1,000 before. Now it'll be 70,000 of us in the air, latching on, and we can make everybody sick, and people can go home, and then they come back out. And then there's these recommendations that send people out before. You know what? I'll just wait. I'll wait. I'll pause. I'll pause there. I'll stop. Yeah. I understand the assignment today. I will pause. Yes.
I could not explain it any better. And thank you for such a colorful explanation. It was brilliant, as always. The bottom line, remember, guys, is that the virus does not want to kill its host. That's never what a virus wants to do, because if a virus kills its host, it limits its ability to transmit. And so one of the things that we've talked about on the streamcast a lot is how stunned we were that with each virus variation or each variant that has emerged, what we saw an increase in virulence and we saw an increase in infectivity. And like
lethality and contagiousness.
Right. So contagiousness and severity, lethality. However, I'm trying to use the word severity instead of virulence now. Right. So we saw increase in contagiousness and increase in severity. Usually it does one or the other. And like Doc Griggs says, is that Omicron, maybe, fingers crossed, my toes are crossed too, that perhaps that we are starting to see a trend into the direction that this virus is no longer going to be both more contagious and more severe in terms of symptom severity, virulence. So
I want to put a pin in it, but I want everyone to remember this is what we thought before Delta came around. We thought the exact same thing. And just because Omicron read the assignment and did its homework and it's following the rules, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a little brother or sister that just has bad, we say bad understanding. You got a bad understanding. Everyone has a relative with bad understanding. And usually if you don't know who it is, it's probably you that just does what it wants to do and can pick up something bad from all of their older siblings. It doesn't mean that it's not out there looming and lurking and trying to figure it out. So you should never get too comfortable, which is why we ended up, I'll give us a pass with Omicron, but with Delta, we got entirely too comfortable, way too soon. Back in the spring, we wanted to experience the roaring 20s, and we did. We had festivals. We didn't wear a mask. They wanted to, no vaccine. There's no way I'm going to get a vaccine. Oh, this is just allergies. Oh, this is just the summer flu, something that we've never heard of, and there it was. The same thing can happen, and we're seeing it now with a relatively milder variant, but we can never get too comfortable. We're learning all of these tools so we can move forward with them. At no point have you ever heard anyone say, okay, we learned enough, stop wearing seatbelts.
Right. Can you talk about schools?
Schools are good. I like school. Schools.
Yeah.
Schools are about to start. There is a vaccine mandate. From what I understand, they are doing regular testing. Today's monumental. Were you going to talk about those with the vaccines?
No, I was going to tell a story about my cousin who is sending her. She lives in Paris, and she called me over the weekend and just had a really, really good, not a good problem, but like a solid problem I wanted to share.
Yeah, in France of all places, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, so here was her dilemma, was that she's got two children, one who is 8 and one who is 5. And I think that the 8-year-old was vaccinated, but they're not able to vaccinate the 5-year-old right now. So, and then of course the parents are boosted. So the 8-year-old goes to school 3 hours in the morning. Then it breaks 2 hours for lunch for parents to come pick up their children, take them home to eat, and then drop them back off at school again. 3 hours more of school. Everybody's masked. The youngest one, the 5-year-old in kindergarten, nobody's vaccinated, and no masks are being used.
I thought you said this is a good story.
No, it was a dilemma.
No, this is a good story. I don't know about a good dilemma. Keep it going.
No. There's nothing good about it except that it was a really bad dilemma, and I had to she knew where I was going with the information, but that this is a really this is an untenable situation. That's what I kept telling her, because it's very likely. And think about it, why would the public health practitioners do that in France? You're sending kids to school without masks that can't be vaccinated, right?
France was at a rate of two people per second were being infected at the time. So no, I don't know. My brain's not big enough. I don't know.
Here's a good question that I would love to.
So that is, as you well know, it's being more than considered. There's on all levels. It's just, I think a lot of us, I'm not saying anyone in government, but people are in shock. This caught us way off guard, and someone's just got to pull the trigger. I see Handsome in the back. Hi, Handsome.
Yeah, is she behind me?
Yeah, on your right shoulder behind you, on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there she is. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that of course Jefferson Parish instituted mask mandates in government buildings. Today, Leon and I had to make some quick errands, and I'm glad to say that like 95% of the people that I saw, we were in Orleans, were all masked. But it is an interesting dilemma that we are not reverting back to a mask mandate. I certainly wish that we would. And also, like, we could easily sell it, like Save Mardi Gras, mask today so that you can mask for Mardi Gras.
So
something.
You want to sell it? And I've had uber success over the last couple of weeks selling it this way. If you can remember when we used to describe the Delta variant coming out with 1,000 paratroopers and with the parachutes coming out of someone's mouth. Imagine with Omicron being 70 times the concentration replicating in your body. I want you to imagine it as a green, funky, and make the face when you describe it to people. Funky, nasty, smelly fog coming out of someone's mouth every time that you talk. And you have the same problem. You just ate onions, the durian,
durian. Wow.
Durian, yeah.
You went to Thailand for that.
Yeah, dude. You just had the most horrible, nasty, garlicky food. And imagine all of that when someone's talking to you. If you can imagine everyone in the room that's talking without a mask, just fill in the room with this green, nasty, funky, eye-watering, and your ACE2 receptors in the eyes, fog. Would you want to breathe that in? Everyone has had a lunch that's had more onions or chives than they thought about, and they weren't in a position to go home and brush their teeth, so they're very conscious of their breath. You can smell it. Just imagine that and assume that everyone is in the same condition. It's not once I describe it that way, most people on the screen, they start making the yuck mouth face, and it's never a problem then as to whether or not they wear a mask. It's just you never look at the people around you again the same. But if you can imagine that, and with it being, again, on a very serious note, Dorian, we did not say Dorian. We said Durian. Dorian is wonderful. He always is. Everything about him is wonderful. He's got a wonderful personality. He's brilliant. He's amazing. He smells great. He's awesome. No, Dorian. If anyone says Dorian smells, come see me. So in all seriousness, I was thinking the same thing, and it's amazing that I was going to bring it to your attention. This thing is broaching the infectiousness of measles, which can linger in the air, if you can imagine. If you can imagine those same paratroopers, that's 70,000, sitting around, just hanging around, waiting on somebody to jump in and make their breath and air funky, nasty, eye-watering, the whole nine. That's what this does. But it stays up here, so you get a little sick. Won't get in your lungs, give you funky, nasty lungs with infections unless you have other conditions or are not vaccinated. I hope this makes sense. I guess I've been doing too much animation because I'm seeing all the cartoons as I say this. But that's why wearing a mask is going to become increasingly important as we move forward. Mark Allen?
Doc Griggs, this is a graph of people who've been vaccinated and people who've not been vaccinated, and how long the virus lasts for. And can you see my cursor here? Can you see my cursor move around?
Yes.
Okay. So for those people who are unvaccinated, something that's clear is that, and we're going to go to this graph right here. This is green, the G right here. And
so
really
folks, I want you to pay attention. There's going to be he's about to pivot into a plot twist that you don't see coming. I've seen this before.
We teased it. Yeah,
you did.
Right. So it was appropriate that you talked about their green phlegm. That they're expectorating.
Funky, nasty green phlegm. There it is, Ayana. There it is.
How long does that green phlegm go for with Omicron? It can go from anywhere from 2 days with an average of 8 days, but it can extend out to 14 days. Wait a second. Are you telling me unvaccinated people with Omicron can shed virus for up to 14 days? Wait a second. That doesn't make sense with the CDC guidelines that have recently come out.
So folks, if you can imagine, so you saw the kind of Christmas tree arrangement. Imagine someone blowing out as hard as they can. It's going to come out of your mouth, focused. It's going to spread out, and then it's going to go. The smaller drops are going to go, and the heavier drops are going to fall. The smaller drops are going to go as far as they possibly can in smaller concentrations. Show it again, and if you can imagine.
Hang on one quick sec. Give me a second here. There we go, and there.
If you can imagine that graph turned horizontally and someone blowing out, sneezing, achoo, you're going to see a small amount here with the increased pressure. Then it's going to balloon out, and then it's going to get smaller as it goes, and it's going to go further and further and further. So that's what it does on day 0. That's from day 0 to 2, it's and then at day 2, it's a chew. And then as you see it peaks at day 6, it gets really, really wide, between 6 to 8. And then as you get to the end of the sneeze, it narrows. And the smaller particles that have been put out the furthest go all the way at 2 weeks. Why is that important, Doc?
Thank you for that. Because something very bizarre happened this past week, and I actually expected it. So when the UK changed their healthcare workers' isolation period. Remember, quarantining is you set aside because you don't know if you have an infection or not. Isolation is you have an infection of whatever it is that we're talking about. In this case, COVID. In this case, healthcare workers. And in this case, what the UK did was looking at the South Africa data and also looking at their own data in an effort to avoid a collapse of the healthcare system. They reduced the length of isolation from 10 days to 5 days, with the caveat that the healthcare provider goes back wearing a mask and they test negative. So rapid antigen test negative. So they test negative.
Rapid what kind of test?
Rapid antigen, right?
Rapid who? Rapid who? Rapid what?
Rapid antigen.
Oh, okay, all right.
And it's anti-gen, right? It's our health commissioner.
No, you can't be anti-gen. She's pro. I'm pro-gen.
No. Auntie-gen. Auntie. No, we're not anti-gen at all. We're very pro-gen. And so what happened was that several hours later, the CDC actually went ahead and then did the same guidelines. But then they chipped away at the guidelines little by little. They got rid of the test. They got the Bionex. That's the anti-gen.
It's not the only one, but yeah.
There's several of them, but we can get to those later. But what they did is they changed the guidelines that from the UK. They got rid of the testing element. Of course, we're assuming that a healthcare provider is going back to work, that there's masking that's going to be done at the place of work, right? So you're going to go to a hospital, a clinic, everybody obviously still masking in those places. Here's the kicker. Kicker was last week, we saw 2 very prominent journalists release letters from Delta, as well as another airline, in which they encouraged Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who's the chief of the CDC, who was the head of infectious diseases at Harvard. We really had a lot of very hope for her, if you will. She's unfortunately had some missteps, but this is her first year running a very large federal program. She's never done that before. Give her lots of latitude. But what it does appear as though is that industry, the economic system, corporations, whatever you want to say, it appears as though that the CDC was pushed into this notion that that all people should have a 5-day isolation period rather than 10 days, so that people can go back to work. Unfortunately, what they did drop for that was the element of getting a test, and also, but of course, they're encouraging that people are going to go out masked. And so I ask you, Doc Griggs, these recommendations that take it from 10 days to 5 days for people who are unvaccinated. If they're unvaccinated, is it a fair assumption to say that they're unlikely to mask up as well? I mean, is that a fair assumption that people who are unvaccinated would probably also see as though that masking is not important as well?
So let's just see if the people that are unvaccinated, for the most part, believe this is a hoax and don't want to get vaccinated and don't like wearing masks, the likelihood that they are going to wear a mask after quarantining is small to none. Like,
right. And so were these guidelines a surprise? Did they come
so I
out of
just
the
sent you something in the private chat.
yes?
Can you pull it up?
It'll take me a second to pull it up, but let me.
Yeah, we're not by ourselves.
Here we go. So let's see.
Oh, did you see the green stuff, folks? No, he's vaccinated. He's good. He's good.
I'm vaccinated and boosted and all the good stuff. In fact, Doc Griggs and I did the vaccination and boosting live.
Yeah, he did. And he gave it. Didn't even feel it. Check this out, folks. This is 5 days ago.
CDC changes to quarantine isolation advice took local health officials by surprise. We know that. And then here, state and local officials say that they're struggling to make sense of the new COVID isolation and quarantine. We're very much trying to digest it now, said the chief executive officer of the National Association of County and City Health Officials. The confusion has left the CDC open accusation that decision was based on politics or lobbying pressure. Now, I will say this, and again, we have not seen them respond to any of that since then. We've not seen them say, no, this is not the case. But what we did see was Dr. Fauci yesterday make his rounds on the circuit to say that they're going to probably ask about and they're going to put back to testing. Did you see that? That testing is going to be part of it?
Yeah. Well, not only did I see it, but I saw it coming. And then they're going to have to clarify and be very specific based on, conversations we had in other due diligence, I'll say, research, our type of research, reading what we do. They're going to have to specify antigen testing versus the PCR testing for the reasons that we talked about earlier.
And Eric, before we just quickly go over to some graphs and stuff, just let's wrap up this, let's tie this together. The reason why we showed you that graph G, that showed that people who are unvaccinated can shed virus.
Show it again so they can see it while you're talking about it.
Yeah. So let me get back to it here, guys. We are, like I said, we are dusting off the cobwebs here.
Yeah, stretching, trying to get back in shape.
So the reason why this is really insane and these recommendations are really hard to wrap our head around is that, as you can see here, is that this is the variation of days. So you can see here the y-axis is days. You can see it goes up to 14. That people who are, and this is in the New England Journal. Guys, here's the New England Journal. This is the most, if not the most, one of the most, if not the most prominent medical journal in healthcare. And you can see very, very clear that people who are vaccinated shed for maybe about 6 days, but you can see even some people get up to 8 days.
Up to 7.5 was a number that I was
right.
Up to 7, yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So these guidelines are, one of the questions that I get pretty regularly is, hey, Doc, can you help us understand why we are still in this situation that we're in right now? And that sort of stuff is the thing that explains it, is that these are guidelines that, and this is something that we've talked a lot about on this show. I know that I've talked a lot about this on Jeffrey's show, is that this is like, finally, we need to finally come to terms, stop the gaslighting. We are a country that prioritizes profits over people. And that's what it comes down to. And we just need to stop the gaslighting and just be very honest.
But with that said, though,
my opinion only, this does not reflect the opinion of anybody else, of WHIV, of Doc Griggs, or anything. This is Dr. Dery's opinion. Go ahead.
So, but with that said, there needs to be an understanding that if you do prioritize anything above public health, particularly economy, eventually there will be no economy. Because whether or not this is a mild case or not, the hospital, just by sheer volume of unvaccinated people, if you go back to that graph, pull it out for a sec. I just want to point something out.
All right, hang on, pulling it back out.
If the unvaccinated are still potentially spreading virus for 14 days and you let them out for 5 days. They have 9 days that they're can still be infectious. If you look at the line, take your finger and go over to 5. That's about half the time, a little more than half of the time that the vaccinated are even infectious.
Eric, that's a devastating point.
That's a devastating point. Look at that. That's right before things explode.
Eric, that is a devastatingly good point. I didn't even see that. That's a devastatingly good point. Here's 5 right here. Look where people are transmitting virus.
It's before the ballooning, before the virus explodes in your body.
Oh, it's a devastating point.
Before you're at your most infectious point, we're saying go back to work for 5 days if you don't have a symptom. And I got to go back. I've been able to think about a lot of things. So if my baseline, let's just work with me here and help me figure this out. So I have a lot of allergies, seasonal allergies, all seasons, the fall season, the winter, the whole 9. You need to be taking the Zyrtec or the antihistamine year round. But if my baseline is runny eyes, scratchy throat, sneezing, mild cough here and there, and someone says I have COVID and I get COVID, well, Eric, do you have any symptoms? No, nothing more than usual. Even though I'm symptomatic, I don't recognize it because that's my baseline. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I'm in the house for 5 days and I walk out and I'm sniffing, sneezing, scratching, the weather's going from 80 in the morning to 30 at night. My sinuses are going to be doing what they normally do. And in my mind, I'm asymptomatic. And it's okay because I have to get a paycheck for me to go to work with a mask. And when I'm at work, if I decide to take a sip of water and take my mask down and do my normal sneeze, do you see the problem there? Like, do y'all see the problem there? Yeah. The quarantines need to be, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, need to be specific to whatever the prevailing variant is of that region at the time. If you're going to kick it down the field and leave it to the local and regional and the officials, it needs the answer, the solution needs to match the problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And your economy goes away once Eric sneezes on day 7 or 8, and I'm unvaccinated, my asymptomatic, because I normally sneeze all the time. The economy goes away once I infect everybody in the office, and no one's able to come to work because they're really sick.
No, I mean, obviously, it's a great point, and if they were so damn concerned about the economy, everybody should have supported the vaccine mandates. So that being said, Eric, do we have any information about 4th test?
No, wait. I want you to read what Sarah said.
All right. I love Sarah. Sarah's my old boss. She hired me at a time when when I was young and dumb, and she had faith in me. So thank you, Sarah, for all your faith. I think you have to take into account what day into their infection do people usually get a test. 3rd to 5th still seems short time to justify the guidelines. Sarah, and of course, I think that's a great point. It's a very nuanced point, and you're right. But and there's no argument whatsoever. But I will say this. It's really hard to argue against this graph, right? Like that's hard.
But Mark Allen, what about this though? If they get tested on the 5th day, like I had someone ask me, but Doc, this would be day 5. So I'm sorry, day 4. So right. I can come out of quarantine tomorrow?
Well, I mean, right now it's, yes, theoretically they should be able to get out of isolation. Yes, theoretically after 5 days, either from the day of the test or from their symptoms onset, theoretically that they should be able to get out. And it's ridiculous. Obviously doesn't make sense.
It's a great point, Sarah.
And it's leaning, again, we're leaning into, and again, for healthcare workers, I actually supported this. Where I disagreed was that they needed to do a test. And so I tried to get testing done at Access. And then they came back to me saying, well, that's not a CDC recommendation. And I'm like, okay, well, let's go with the CDC recommendation. Well, I assumed it was, but I think it's going to get changed.
That's an issue that you're going to run into, and they're not wrong in their line of thinking from a risk 100%, management perspective, because 100%. You don't want to go. And again, folks, our job is to educate and point out the science, the data as we interpret it, and to foster healthy discussion and thought, because the change has to come from A lot of times it has to be from the bottom up. Policy has to be based on no one wants to expose themselves and go against the CDC guidelines. Does that make sense? I mean, it's just 100%. No one wants to be in that water. It's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quickly before we just jump into numbers, Mignon, I don't know about yet. You always want to get the flu shot, even if the strains are wrong or off or whatever. You definitely still want a stimulation of your immune system. You want that booster dose to kind of stimulate. So again, remember, flu shots are like, or just any vaccines really, but in this case, flu shots are more like seatbelts. It's not going to prevent you from getting into a car accident. The idea is that it's going to prevent the severity of illness as a result of that car accident. So everybody should go get a flu shot, including your mom. So whether or not there's a 100% match versus a 90% match versus a 50% match, it doesn't matter. Remember, with the mRNA vaccines that we have right now, those were built for the virus that emerged out of Wuhan. That strain, the wild type strain specifically. What it wasn't built for was the alpha. Remember, that was the first ring. You put a pebble in the water. The first ring that emerged was alpha. The second ring that emerged was delta. The third ring that emerged was this one right here, was the Omicron. And then there will be continued rings. And this is likely going to be the need for some potential, we don't know, maybe new annual booster vaccine, which is what I'm kind of assuming. I think that this is going to be a 3-shot vaccine. That's your baseline. And then after that, you probably get boosters. But we're really speculating, and we're kind of getting.
I got a question. I have a question because I was asked it, and I did not have an answer. And like we said, if you run into the doctor that's not afraid to tell you, I don't know, but I'll try to find out, then find another doctor to talk to. So the word did come out saying that this year's flu strain was not 100%, that it was H3N2. And I'm not sure if that was in the 4 that were in the vaccine or not. But they were asking, when they realize things like that with the new technology, this mRNA technology, do they update the vaccine for the second half of the flu season, or how does that work?
No, they don't do it. The vaccine's the vaccine for the year. That's it. Like they don't. There's never an update. It takes too long. It takes 6 months to actually. One of the nice things about these mRNA vaccines is once we get them for the flu, we can make change. We possibly even make changes like that. But the way that manufacturing in the U.S. is that we don't have enough glass tubes and manufacturing is unfortunately so poor here because a lot of that stuff got moved out. So maybe mRNA vaccines could handle something like that. Once we know what the strain is, we'd be able to very quickly create new vaccines to handle that strain. But right now, the way flu vaccines are done is they're grown in egg cultures. And that's why it takes so long, and you need a huge processing plant for that to happen. So, Eric, go ahead.
Well, no, Dorian's asked this question the second time, and it's a question that I've gotten in the last few months about titers and blah, 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 blah.
Right. So here's the thing with titers. And Dorian, it's a great question, and I get it all the time. We don't know what a titer is. So here's the deal. I'm a infectious disease doctor. I deal with the immune system all the time. I know maybe about 5%, maybe 3% of the immune system. The immune system is so incredibly complicated, right? Especially for for mammals, particularly, specifically for humans. And so we don't know what's a titer that's good for me, that may be a titer that's good for you, that may be a titer that's good for somebody else. We don't know. Those studies have not been done yet. And so there's no minimal titer that needs to be, that we could say, well, that's an acceptable titer for effective immunity. We just don't know what that is. If we start doing 4th doses and 5th doses, that's going to probably be more like a flu vaccine. So I would not be, we've joked that, you may get the Fluvid vaccine, which is flu vaccine with COVID in it, or the co-flu, or the co-fluenza, whatever.
You remember early on, they were talking about making a vaccine X that had all of it in it early, like the first year, they were talking about doing exactly that. We don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, again, it's a good question. It's a fair question, but we don't know enough about titers. So, Eric, let's kind of jump to things here real quickly. We're down to kind of our last couple minutes. in the show. I know that this time moves so quickly, but here is what cases look like right now in the U.S. And this is insane.
Wow.
Look. Do you remember being here and remember talking about that slope and all? Look at this. This is insane. It's just obviously we have not seen anything like this before, and they're constantly having to adjust. Look at, they haven't even adjusted the y-axis over here. You see, that should say 100,000. That hasn't even said 100,000 on there.
That should say 1 million.
That should say 1 million. You're right. My apologies. That should say 1 million. Absolutely. So that's where that is, which is just an incredible number of cases right now. I do want to show you what things are looking like in Louisiana. Louisiana is obviously not spared this as well. So we're going to kind of go from Louisiana. We're going to go into Oregon.
Can I just interject something small here, though?
Yes.
Folks, that graph that he just showed isn't what's happening in the U.S. is not just Omicron. In the Northeast and in the Midwest, they're still the surges they're seeing is Delta. In Philadelphia, there was one site today that did over 800 tests, and 45% of those tested positive for COVID. 45%. And it's Delta that they're seeing. Omicron isn't even there yet.
Yeah. And look at this. The average 8,188 7-day average. They actually had to adjust again. They had to adjust the y-axis to 30,000 here to accommodate this. But I mean, look, did you think we would ever see that? Remember we were here and freaking out? Remember we were here and freaking out? Remember being here and freaking out? Remember being here, and then we went off air because Ida and I had to start working in the hospitals, right? And then we were here, and then we were like, well, there's really nothing going on. If something happens, we'll jump back on air. Well, this happened.
It's almost like it bent down to settle down, to leap up. And what really frightens me is the next one.
Yeah, I always say COVID 2022 scares me?
Yeah, you did.
I was always one that said COVID 2022. So let me show you this one as well. This is one where this is obviously Orleans Parish. And here's where we are. Our testing positivity is 13.5, highest it's ever been.
So can you give the normals where we were when things were calm?
You're 2%. I'll get to that in a second. There's graphs for that. Yeah. So first of all, look where we are. This doesn't show today's data, but Liana actually is going in and having to fix this y-axis daily because it just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. And Liana is the one that goes in and adjusts the y-axis to accommodate this, because it used to be, think about it, we blew past that original peak that we had. I thought for sure that our summer peak was going to blow through it, but it never quite did. This, come on, how do we not say this is the most infectious virus, right? I look at that and that's what I see. Speaking of infection rate, we peaked out. We peaked out at 1.66 during the quote unquote peak of the pandemic. Earlier on, it was 1.74. I'm not sure I 100% believe it, because this was a far less infectious virus, but you can see we definitely peaked out, and hopefully this is going down. Now, again, that's the infection rate. This probably reflects better masking. This reflects more vaccinated individuals, what have you. But you can see we haven't peaked out on our cases yet. And so that's an important thing.
So explain the difference, Mark Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Infection rate versus cases. Tell them exactly.
Right. So the infection rate can be changed by non-pharmacological interventions, right? More people are going and getting vaccinated. More people are wearing. So we talked about one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, and we've got 3 minutes left, Eric. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today was you got to upgrade your mask. Your masking game has to be on. So that means KN95s, N95s, No more of the cloth mask. If you do wear a cloth mask, you should have a base mask underneath it. So either the minimum should be 2 surgical masks, or a KN95 with a cloth
mask over,
over it as well. So so this could reflect better masking. It could reflect a lot of things. But we guys recognize we are in way exponential growth. That means just doubling every 2 or 3 days. So this is going to go up and up and up until, quite frankly, the virus just runs out of human wood to burn. Now, remember, even though you've been boosted and vaccinated, you can still be reinfected or infected, right? But look at this. Look at this test positivity. Like, this is insane. This is up to 24%. This is like insane. Our test positivity was low. Look at all that green. That means that we were doing super well. We were testing enough people, but now not enough people are being tested. And that's largely due to the fact that there aren't enough tests to go around. Hospitalizations are starting to go up. I know because this is, I'm going to be brought in back to the COVID units, but this is when I started in the COVID units and covered all of that there.
So real quick, folks, I don't want you to be deceived by the hospitalization rate. Remember, there is at least 70 to 75 million people that aren't vaccinated. And again, this is COVID. It can put you in the hospital. Even if it were quote unquote mild and they catch the flu, the flu kills 50 to 80,000 people a year.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Lance says, I did feel a lot of people were saying Omicron when this last surge happened, and I was like just a little premature. I think right now we can say that it definitely is. I've been
in this region, because in the Northeast, in other regions, it's Delta.
Now, one of the things that's really interesting, and we still have a couple minutes, Eric. I'm sorry. One of the things that's super interesting is that Omicron protects against Delta. Do you want to kind of talk about that real quickly? And what kind of what do people say? What do you say to people who then say, "Well, I got infected with Omicron. I've got super immunity now." How do you respond to that?
Give the Twitter version of tell what you mean when you say that. Say what you mean in the Twitter version.
I think that what we are thinking about is that, yes, indeed, that Omicron does protect against Delta, and that, yes, there is a manner of immunity that you have that is certainly quite robust, but I don't think that necessitates that you take off your mask or you start engaging in some of the non-pharmacological
Omicron parties. There's no.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Eric, anything else?
No, folks, believe it or not, this is a practice run. We're trying to get this. We're going to be on Wednesdays at 6, unless I can convince Mark Allen. He's going to be worn out on Monday. And you know what? I got to start teaching 2 classes. I don't know what my days are, but it feels good to be back in the saddle again.
It does. Yes, and Elizabeth does bring up and continues to bring up the good point of what long haul could be. Nobody wants to have long haul, obviously, so that's super important for us to recognize that that is a thing. We don't know what long COVID looks like, so that's something. We will be back Wednesday at 6. Our idea is to possibly do it either once a week or possibly twice a week, but definitely Wednesdays at 6 are going to be our locked-in days. And again, today was just really a trial run. Was to get a lot of this stuff out, and then focusing on putting together stories like we used to do, answering questions like we used to do, and then we were also able to get out to more platforms with this new iteration of Restream. So as always,
the thing is, though, we want feedback from you. What do you think? We want to build this into something that will be most valuable. Like I said, like he said, we'll be there once a week, definitely. If you want more, if you want to change in style, now's the time to do it. Because I do miss his stories, and he's got graphs. He has. I got a slide. He loves it. So there it is. And of course, shut up and take the shot.
And then for those of you, we will be bringing back the mic drop too. Anyway, thank you guys so much. It's so good to be back. I appreciate all of your just support that you guys have here. thank you guys so much. And thank you again.
You know how to reach us with any questions. We're everywhere, but we'll see you on Wednesday.
We'll see you guys all on Wednesday. Thank you guys. Everybody,
Health
peace
is a
out.
human right.
Yeah.